This is going to be probably one of the more difficult things to understand, but it's a crucial part of understanding basic trigonometry. How do we think of the basic 90, 45, 60, and 30-degree angles, and what are their counterparts in radians? This is super important. So, in our last video, we learned that 180 degrees is the same as pi radians. So if we look at these little half circles that we've got right here, how many degrees is one of these half circles? That's 180 degrees. So we can think of this as pi radians. So think of this piece of a circle here as a whole pie. So we've got a whole pie. It's calzone shaped, but it's a whole pie, right? Okay. So let's see. 90 degrees is how much of 180 degrees? Well, it takes two 90-degree angles to make 180 degrees. Does that make sense? So 90 is half of 180 degrees. So half of 180 degrees is 90 degrees, right? But remember, 180 degrees is the same as pi radians. So this is the same as half of a pi. So if we do common denominators here and multiply, this gives us what we call pi over 2. So 90 degrees is the same as half of a pi or pi over 2 radians. That is something you're going to need to memorize, that 90 degrees is the same as pi over 2 radians. That's how we measure it. I know this is weird, but that's how we start thinking in terms of radians, okay? So let's look at that same full pie, that calzone shaped full pie, right? That's 180 degrees. Now let's think about the 45-degree angles. How many 45-degree angles do I see here? Well, here is one 45-degree slice. And here's another 45-degree slice. And here's another 45-degree slice. And then here is our last 45-degree slice. So how many 45-degree slices make up 180 degrees? 4. So each one of these slices is a fourth of 180 degrees. See how this is working? So 45 degrees is one fourth of 180 degrees. It takes 408, it takes four 45-degree slices to make a full 180 degrees. But remember, 180 degrees is the same as one pi worth of radians. So if we think in terms of radians, there it's one fourth of a pi worth of radians. Well, that we can then turn into pi over 4. So we think 45 degrees, measured in degrees, that angle in degrees, is the same as pi over 4 radians. Okay? Take a full pie, cut it into 4 slices, and that one of those slices is 45 degrees, or pi over 4 radians. Everybody see how this is working? So what's nice about this one is that it's 45 and pi over 4. So the 4s go together. It's kind of the way that I remember 45 degrees, pi over 4. And you're going to have to memorize those. So it's a nice little trick there. All right, let's think about 60-degree slices, okay? Let's cut our 180 degrees into 60-degree slices. So here is 60 degrees. 60 plus 60 is 120. Here's another 60 degrees. And then 120 plus another 60, that gets us to 180 degrees. So how many slices, if we're cutting 60-degree slices, how many slices did we get out of this whole thing, whole pie? Well, we got 3. So 60 is one third of 180 degrees, which is one third of pi radians, or pi over 3, a third of a pi. So we can see that 60 degrees is pi over 3 radians. Okay, our last one that we always think of, our last of our big four angles is 30 degrees, and this one has a lot of cuts. So 30 degrees is our first slice. 30 plus 30 is 60. There's another slice. 60 plus 30 is 90. There's another slice. Plus another 30 is 120. Plus another 30 is 150. Plus another 30 is 180. So how many slices did we get here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 slices of pizza when we're cutting them into 30-degree angles. Do we see that? So our pie has been cut into 6 pieces. So 30 degrees is 1/6 of 180. And if you're confused about this, just put that in your calculator. What is 1/6 times 80? What's 30 degrees? But remember, 180 degrees is pi radians. So this is 1/6 of pi radians, or pi over 6 radians. So 30 degrees is pi over 6 radians. So what I do to remember the 30 and the 60, you almost always see 30 and 60 kind of together because they're in the 30, 60, 90 triangle. And what I do is I think, oh, the 3's and the 6's switch. So 60 degrees gets a 3 on the bottom, and 30 degrees gets a 6 on the bottom. That's kind of how I help myself remember these. So all 4 of these angles are something that you are going to have to get memorized. It is very important that you memorize these 4 angles in degrees and what their representations are in radians.